I was looking around and I noticed there are a couple of men here, and I wanted to ask them if they were being rewarded or punished. Ann Doyle has been on the front lines of women's progress for decades. You know, when we talk about decades, that used to seem really scary to me. That seemed like you're old or something. But now it seems more like how experienced we are, how much we've learned. I wouldn't go back if I could. But Ann Doyle was a pioneering TV, news, and sports journalist, and she was inducted into the Michigan Journalism Hall of Fame for her leadership in opening the sports locker rooms to female reporters. As a business leader, she helped lift the auto industry's steel ceiling at Ford Motor Company, and Automotive News named her one of the 100 leading women in the auto industry. She's a single mom who reinvented herself again when her son was hitting his teens. That's when she began writing Powering Up, and I know some of you have that book on your table already. Powering Up, How America's Women Achievers Can Become Leaders, and ran for office, serving a 4-year term on the Auburn Hills City Council. Ann's work as a speaker, writer, and a voice for women and girls takes her all over the world. She's been sent by the State Department to Trinidad, Spain, and Saudi Arabia just in the recent past. I met Ann over the phone last week, and we discovered we have mutual friends. That's so fun. And then I got to meet her in person last night at dinner, and I think you people are going to be really amazed and inspired. Please welcome Ann Doyle.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Gwen. And thank you, Susie Marks. I had a fantastic dinner with the women who are the organizers behind this event last night. And I just want to tell you how thrilled I am, really, to be part of it, to be down here in beautiful Little Rock. And I also want to say that I am a member of the Chamber of Commerce, and I am a graduate of Leadership Detroit, class 28 of Leadership Detroit. So I understand that program very well and appreciate the Chamber of Commerce and your first ever statewide, or I guess in southern Arkansas, Women's Leadership Conference. So it really is fantastic. But also, you know, I wanted to say that, you know, I just am thrilled to be here. And speakers always say that, you know, that, oh, I'm thrilled to be here in beautiful Little Rock. But, you know, if you think I'm kidding about how thrilled I am to be here, take a look at my driveway last week. Okay, so I'm from Michigan, in Auburn Hills, Michigan, which is I know your mouth is hanging open there, right? Those are drifts. That's my driveway. I live in the country, but the drifts were so deep that that's Steve, my snowplow man, that he was stuck, and I had to go out there and help shovel to get my snowplow guy out of the drifts. So you can imagine how thrilled I am to be here in your beautiful state. But really, the real reason that I'm thrilled to be here is all of you sitting in this room. And I want to ask you, how many of you have ever done, or maybe still do, yoga? So you know what I mean when I say to you, namaste. I see the light in you. I feel the energy in you. And you give me energy to keep doing absolutely everything that I can to build momentum for women. Because here you are, almost 500 highly educated, professionally seasoned women with ganas, as they say in Spanish, or drive. And on top of that, women who understand the power of coming together with your own cultural tribe. To me, individually and collectively, you are living evidence of this rising female force field that's happening all over the world, from southern Arkansas to southern Oregon, where I was 10 days ago, to Saudi Arabia, where I was last May. And I have to say that, you know what? You are my fuel also when I was working on my book. Because when I started writing my book, I was very frustrated. To me, I really felt as if it was very clear to me that women had stalled. And I really wanted to know, what is it going to take for all these high-achieving women to power up now to leadership roles? And writing a book is very solitary work. You know, it's exciting when you're doing all the research and interviewing all these incredible people, but eventually you have to sit yourself down in front of a laptop and start wearing out the keys. That's very solitary work. But you gave me energy then, too, because I hadn't met you yet. I hadn't seen your faces. I didn't know your names, but I knew you were there. And I knew you were hungry for what's next. And there are millions of women all over the world who are hungry for what's next. And you know, when I reflect about how far we've come, of course I think about some of my own defining moments, and I'm sure you do that too. And I have to say that over 4 decades, I've been a professional woman for that long, and I have been tested in some kind of interesting leadership laboratories, and that's the context that I bring to this conversation. Coming out of the university in the early 70s, when trying to get a job, and even the news director at my own university, the University of Michigan, where I was an intern, would not allow me to step foot in the news department. He literally said to me, he called me over to the door and said, "You see this line? Don't you cross it. Don't you come in here to answer the phone, to put something on my desk, to read the news wire, because there is no place in a newsroom for a woman." Of course, he was wrong. And someone did give me a chance. And the ones who gave us chances back then, of course, were men, because there weren't women. How many women in this room can think about men who've given you opportunities? Yeah. And then I did move into sport, or into news. And then in 1978, when I was working out in Los Angeles, wanting to come home to Detroit, looking for a news job, and the news director at the CBS affiliate there said to me, "I'd like to hire you, but we don't have a news job. How about doing sports?" And and that was interesting. I'll tell you a story about that too. But the general manager of the Detroit Tigers, of course, said to me when I asked for sports credentials, "Over my dead body, you're going in our locker room." Auto industry, pushing up against what we call the steel ceiling. And you can see in that picture there, yes, I did smoke my share of cigars when I'm the only woman, and you're just going to be the outsider if you don't. And I'm a single mother, and that also is a leadership laboratory, absolutely. That's my son, Kevin. He's 22 years old now. That's us at Niagara Falls. You can see that's kind of a bad hair day for me. Another really important leadership laboratory for me is about the picture in the middle of there. That's my sister Mary. I'm one of 7 children. I'm the big sister of 7 children. And I'm 5 and Mary is 2 there, and I'm teaching her how to make mud pies. My sister Mary committed suicide when she was 22 years old. Mary is the fire in my belly. Very different paths that I've been on, but I would say to you that through it all there is one common theme. That lifting the female half of the human race is my lifetime passion. I believe in us. I believe in our power to strengthen and lift our communities, our companies, and the human family. And I believe in each one of you pursuing whatever path calls to you. And I'm here today because every one of you is a Mary to me. So my hope is to inspire you this morning, because I do believe we are on the verge of a tremendous cultural sea change regarding women's place in the world. And I agree with your own Hillary Clinton, who has said it many, many times in many, many ways. And she said it just recently again, and I love these words. She says, "It is past time for women to take their rightful place side by side with men in the rooms where the fates of peoples, where their children's and grandchildren's fates are decided. To me, stepping up to leadership roles in very big numbers, as we once poured into all those so-called men's jobs back in the 70s and the 80s, that is our next frontier. And to me, it's every bit as important as some of the pictures that you see here. Every bit as important in terms of human development and history as the suffragettes who fought for 75 years in this country, including chaining themselves to the White House fence so that we could get the right to vote. The courageous women of the civil rights movement. The women, American women, who took to the streets in the 60s and the 70s to fight for the legal rights and the economic opportunities we all take for granted today. Trailblazers, such as Sandra Day O'Connor, Amelia Earhart, Rosa Parks, Geraldine Ferraro. And I love to imagine and think about the courage and the strength of those pioneering women giving birth to their babies in the back of those covered wagons on the Oregon Trail. But to me, the evidence is absolutely everywhere that tremendous momentum is building. I told you that I was discouraged when I wrote my book, but I feel momentum building. And let me just mention a couple of what I call gold medal moments. Janet Yellen, first woman head of the Federal Reserve. She has the US economy in her hands. You could say she's one of the most powerful women in the world right now. Mary Barra, our own Mary Barra in Detroit, CEO of General Motors, first ever woman to head a global auto industry. Ski jumping, the women jumping at Sochi, at the Olympics. That took about 90 years, and there's a great story behind that. The marble ceiling, as we now have 23 women heads of state in the world, including 3 women presidents in South America. And I believe there's a very good chance that we're going to see a woman president sooner rather than later. Just the tip of the iceberg. But for me, each of us has leadership opportunities. The important thing is that we all have a role to play in this. Don't leave it for someone else. We all have a role to play in our own circles of influence. And leadership opportunities, sometimes they come to you, sometimes you see them and you go after them. But the really important thing is for you to recognize them and then open the door to them, take a deep breath, and leap. And I want to give you an example from my own experience because everybody always wants to hear a locker room story. And so I'll tell you that. And I didn't seek that. It wasn't that I really was this crazy little sports girl. My father was a sports broadcaster. So I grew up with sports around the dining room table every night. And I was a tomboy, absolutely. But I didn't have this career ambition to be a sports broadcaster. I was a journalist. I was a news journalist. But when that news director offered me that job to do sports, I sat in his office and I thought to myself, te toca, as they say in Spanish. This one's for you. Because I knew that I could do that. And I knew that somebody had to do that. And at that time in this country, women in every profession were opening doors of opportunity. And it was happening everywhere, but those women were alone. They tended to be alone, and there are women in this room who know exactly what I'm talking about. And I told the news director, I said, let me think about that, because I knew it would be controversial. And I also knew that I didn't want to embarrass my father. And my father was the sports director at the major radio station in town. He was the broadcaster of Michigan football. He was the president of the Detroit Sports Broadcasters Association. And I was visiting my parents. I went home that night, and my parents said, well, hey, Annie, how'd it go? How are the interviews going? And I said, well, pretty good. And Channel 2 offered me a job, but they want me to do sports. And my father literally put his fork down mid-bite. And he looked at me and he said, really? Yep. And he said, you take that job. And I said, yeah, Dad, but if I take this job, I'm going to have to go in those locker rooms. And my father didn't hesitate. And he said to me, absolutely, if you don't go in those locker rooms, you will have no credibility as a woman sports reporter. And my father took tremendous pressure from his peers, who basically said to him, you have to stop her because she's going to wreck it for all of us. Because they feared that if I pushed my right to have equal access into those locker rooms as the men, the teams would close their locker rooms to everybody. But my father backed me all the way. And my father also gave me the best advice I ever had, and I want to share it with you. And I'm going to share 2 mantras with you today that I hope you'll remember. And this little mantra plays in my voice still. And it's really simple. 3 words. Never eliminate yourself. And the way my dad explained this to his 7 children was really simple. He said, you know what? The world is a very competitive place. And if you're not the best one for the job, best player for the team, best one for that promotion, they will eliminate you. Somebody will beat you out. But if you don't go for it, you have eliminated yourself. When that little voice starts talking to you, push her away. And remember my father's words. And I would still say to you that even today, I see women eliminating ourselves in millions of ways. We eliminate ourselves by not running for office in big numbers. Thank you, Senator, for being here today. And not supporting women candidates and writing checks the size that men write. We eliminate ourselves when we don't do that. We eliminate ourselves when we don't raise our voices and speak up, especially when we're the only woman in the room. We eliminate ourselves by not giving business to one another and helping each other with our professional goals, as men have been doing for centuries. And we eliminate ourselves by allowing our culture to bombard our girls with this message that being hot is still your strongest card. Everywhere I look, I see the human family crying out. This is why it matters that women lead. Because I see, especially our children, crying out for the wisdom of mothers, the mothers of the world, to step up. Our children who are homeless, who are victims of shootings in our schools, victims of brutal wars, and sold in astonishing numbers into sexual trafficking. I will say to you, the human family needs its mothers contributing at our very highest level in every arena. And the thing is that we're ready. Yes, we had to fill the pipeline, but we are ready now. You know these statistics. 51% of the workforce. 80% of the buying power. We're the shoppers. And you've probably heard that more women are earning college degrees, graduate degrees, and now PhDs. But that's been going on for 30 years. Since 1982, 10 million more women in this country have earned college degrees than men. Now, I care about what's going on with our young men. I'm the mother of a son, but that's a different conversation. Because the point is that too much of this talent and wisdom and brain power is not being utilized. Because men still hold over 80% of the leadership roles everywhere you want to look in the United States and all over the world. Politically, globally, our own US Congress, only 17% of our Congress. In business, The numbers have barely budged for 10 to 15 years. And there's something called the Global Gender Index, which ranks countries all over the world in terms of the equity between men and women. The US is number 1 on that in terms of education between the genders. We are number 60 in terms of political empowerment, which is about the number of women in elected office. 59 other nations in this world have more women in elected office than we do. Something's wrong there. And globally, we have even more work to do. Take a look at these statistics from the State Department. You know, we are 52% of the world's population. We produce 60% of the world's output. We earn 10% of the world's income, and women own 1% of the world's property. But here's some good news for you. At the beginning of the 21st century, we now have 3 incredible generations, millions of high-achieving, professionally seasoned women in the US workplace, and we are standing right on the precipice of another major surge forward. So when I was working on my book, I started thinking about this. And there are 3 very, very different generations. And each one of these generations is in this room today. And I decided to give names to each one, and I decided to write a chapter on each one so that we could understand our differences. So let me introduce you. The first generation, this is my generation. I call these the pioneering interlopers. Interloper means impose yourself where you're not wanted. Now, we are 55 and older right now. And you can thank Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Coretta Scott King, Madeleine Albright, of course, Hillary. We were kind of the Marines taking the professional beaches right out of school. And we took some heavy fire. Because the message that we received growing up as girls and entering the workforce was real simple. No, you can't. No, you can't be a business executive, be a lawyer, be a judge, be a doctor. Go in those sports locker rooms. Next generation. I call them the influential insiders. Michelle Obama, perfect example of this group, this generation. There were more of them. Here she is, Harvard law degree, more law degrees, more medical degrees, more MBAs, more college-educated women with career aspirations pouring into the workforce. Think Michelle Obama, think astronaut Sally Ride, think Sheryl Sandberg. But the thing about them, the message that they received by the time they were entering the workforce was, well, maybe you can. Because by that time, there was an opportunity for one woman at the table. And what that did was it pitted women against one another for that one woman job. And so instead of seeing each other as allies for a bigger piece of the pie, we saw each other as the competition for that one woman job. And if you've ever heard a woman say, I'm no feminist, but, you're talking to an influential insider. I'm not one of those troublemaker pioneering interlopers, but I want those jobs that they fought for. And the next group is, these are our Gen Ys, and these are all subsets of baby boomers, Gen X's, and Gen Ys, but I'm only talking about the educated, high-achieving women who are the DNA, or the pool from which our leaders will come. So how do you ignore the Gen Ys? So I call them the I'll do it my way innovators. Very, very different breed of cat. They're your daughters, maybe some of your granddaughters. And think Angelina Jolie, Beyonce, Danica Patrick, race car driver. They grew up playing sports. They competed with boys. They kind of took that for granted. I love what Danica says. She said, I wasn't raised to be the fastest girl. I was raised to be the fastest driver. The message they grew up with was, yes, you can. Yes, you can. So they're the most ambitious generation of women in history. But they take a lot for granted because the roads they're traveling on are paved. And there's jungle ahead. And they have no idea. They really underestimate what a slippery greasy pole the pole to leadership truly is. And let's not forget our girls. I'm calling them the instigators. They're not in the workplace yet, but the leading edges in high school. They're starting to drive. The youngest are walking and talking. Think Pakistan's Malala. At 15 years old, named one of the most influential people in the world for standing up, for her courage, taking a bullet in the head for wanting to be educated. And you know, I love the new Ban Bossy campaign of the Girl Scouts. I think it's terrific, and Gwen, thank you for your fascinating column in Arkansas Business about that theme. So there's our gene pool. We're ready. The pipeline is absolutely bursting. So what is it that we need then to make this leap to leadership? That was the question that I was looking for. And I have to say to you that the biggest thing that's holding us back right now is ourselves. We have got to empower ourselves to, I like to say, invite yourself and invite other women to the leadership dance, because no one's going to invite you. And I think of what we truly need are three things. We need leadership skills, and I'm going to give you my list. In my book, there's a chapter on each one of these. To me, it's our graduate work. You're a high achiever, you've mastered all of that. Next piece, leadership skills. And we're really on a steep learning curve when it comes to that, but we can flatten that out pretty quickly. Next, we need men in the game with us. We need powerful male allies and sponsors. And we need to help one another, because we really are in kindergarten compared to men in terms of understanding how interdependent we are and how we need to help one another. It's truly in learning how to play as a team. We really have to join Team Women. So here's my next mantra. I told you there are two. My second one that I hope you'll remember is this: every woman for herself is a losing strategy. I hope you all know by now, you are never, ever, ever going to be one of the guys. I don't care what your golf handicap is. I don't care how much you know about sports. You're never going to be one of the guys. And, the brotherhood is a pretty well-oiled machine. So the sisterhood, we have to get our act together. So I say to you, look around this room. Your biggest allies in terms of accomplishing your professional and personal goals are sitting in this room today. Are the women who came and made it a priority to come here today. Take advantage of this moment to meet them, connect with them, and then build on those relationships and ask them for help. And make sure you reciprocate by helping them as well. So I told you there are 7 leadership practices, and I'm just going to skip through these very quickly, just mention them, because as I said, there's a whole chapter on each one, and we can talk about it in the Q&A if you want. But the first one is discover your purpose. That has to be your passion. Mine is all about my sister Mary and lifting women. But find your purpose, because that's going to be your fuel, because leadership is too hard if you don't have very clear about what your purpose is. Next one, raise your voice. This is all about communication skills. Women have been finding our voices for a few decades now. It is time to raise our voices, and a great way to do that is run for office. Next one, break the rules. You have to master the rules of the game before you can start breaking them. But once you've done that, in our high achiever, leaders do not support the status quo. Leaders break the rules in a strategic, values-driven way. It's essential, if you're going to lead, to break the rules. Next one, claim power. This is what I was saying about invite yourself to the leadership dance. No one's going to invite you. I want that job. Elect me to that office. Drink at dangerous waters. Drink at Dangerous Waters, of course, this is about getting out of your comfort zone and taking risks. But it's also about a 21st century skill of becoming culturally multilingual. And what I mean by that is the ability, the skill, to work effectively across gender lines, across generational lines, across racial and political differences. All of those things, that's all about the skill of drinking at dangerous waters. Next one, get back in the saddle. This, of course, is about failure. And you know, it's not about avoiding failure, because if you truly haven't failed, and I mean big time failed, then you don't know your limits yet. So it's not about avoiding failure. It's about how quickly you pick yourself up, dust yourself off, jump back on your horse, and charge right back into the fray. And the last one, this is the only one that really doesn't apply to men at all, because this is about leading as a woman. And when I was thinking about all of these, I said to myself, you know what? Women have been learning from men for a few decades here, because those were the models. But we all know that we're not men, and so we're never going to be, if we're judged on their standards, we're always going to fail because we're not men. But we're at this moment where we needed a word, in my mind, to describe a fully evolved woman leader. And to me, femininity is really about our softer side. And so womaninity is to masculinity, kind of as Ms. is to Mr. That those are parallel words. And to me, it's all about a woman tapping into all of the unique strengths of our gender. And we know now that men and women's brains process information differently. It's not a compliment to be told you think like a man. Let me give you an example of what I'm talking about in terms of womaninity. I mentioned Mary Barra. We're so proud of her in Detroit as the first woman to head up a global automotive company as the CEO at General Motors. Now, Mary Barra doesn't want to touch, she's been bombarded since she was named by reporters about questions like, what's it like to be the first woman CEO of an auto company? And Mary Barra does not want to touch that question with a 10-foot pole. She's working very, very hard to deflect it. And she's even been quoted as saying, I don't walk into a room with the mindset of a woman. And she's working very hard to really get away from that and position herself as simply a leader, a brilliant leader, with 33 years of experience at General Motors, a chemical engineer or electrical engineer with an MBA from Stanford. That's what she wants to talk about. And so I understand very well why she says to reporters, I don't walk into a room with the mindset of a woman. It reminds me of the executive at Ford Motor Company who said to me one time, you know, Ann, you're doing a great job. I have just one piece of advice for you. You have to always stop seeing things through the eyes of a woman. People are getting really tired of it. People. Really. And I said, you know what? I'm getting really tired of being the only woman in that room. And if I don't speak up and say what I see through the eyes of perhaps half of our customers, why don't you just put another man in that room? And so what I'm saying about that is Mary Barra came through a culture that did not reward women for thinking like a woman. So I understand why she says that, but I believe that we are finally ready to relax into our skin as women and fully embrace the strengths of our gender. I truly believe that a fully evolved woman has learned that being a woman is not a handicap to overcome. It's not a weakness to be minimized. It is career capital and a strength to be leveraged. That's womaninity. I mentioned men. We have to engage men now as active allies. And we have our own work to do on ourselves. But men still hold the keys to what I call the leadership locker room doors. And what intrigues me now is growing numbers of men who are saying, I get it. I understand. Women are some of my best talent and best performers. What do you want me to do to make sure that they do get promoted to their full level, that we don't lose them? Men are asking these questions, and I'm encouraged when I see the President of the United States talking about the gender pay gap and leadership gap in the State of the Union address. I'm encouraged when I see the Pope telling the world we need women's wisdom in the church. That's my own father in the center there, who was a tremendous ally to me. I'm encouraged, the other man in the lower left there, that's Sergio Marchionne. He's the CEO of Fiat Chrysler. And he spoke to 1,000 people in the auto industry last year, and he said, organizations that are tapping the leadership and brain power of primarily one gender are looking at the world through one eye. There are plenty of allies in men. Engage them, talk to them, ask them to get in the game with us. So if there's one thing I have learned, is yes, change happens, but positive social change does not just happen. It takes leaders to lead it. And believe me, there are plenty of steel ceilings and glass ceilings and marble ceilings for us to smash, and plenty of frontiers for us to open for those who are following us. So I want to challenge you today. I want to challenge you not to be complacent about how far we have come. I want to challenge you and urge you to keep pushing the edges of possibility for yourself, for your communities here in Arkansas, and for your global sisters everywhere. Because we absolutely know now, with our interlopers, insiders, innovators, and our instigators who are watching us, that women absolutely can do it. The question really is when. Let's not leave it for others to do. Let's do it on our watch. And let's make leadership, women's leadership, our legacy. Thank you. So I believe we have a little time for questions, and I made quite a career out of tough questions in my years as a journalist, so I hope you have some great questions or even comments about some of the ideas I put out here. Oh, thank you. And I think we have mics, right? Do we have runners? Okay, so I'm going to ask you to please stand up. And everyone knows Gwen, but other people, please introduce yourselves.
You can repeat my question.
How about this microphone right here? Here, Gwen. I think this one's working.
Or you're just really loud.
Can she use the one from the podium?
This one's loud.
Is it
Yeah.
wireless up here?
Okay, it's working now.
You want to try this one?
Try this one. Oh. I have this theory on why women don't run for political office as much as men. And my theory is that men look at the people who are in those positions, who have run and won, and say, I'm as good as that guy. I could win, I could run, and I could win. And I think women look at the people in office and go, they're not nearly as good as what we deserve. And I wish we would have better, but I'm not nearly what we deserve. And so women tend to compare themselves with their ideal, whereas men, I think, compare themselves with the guy that already has the job. Why do you think women hesitate to run for office?
Well, I'm going to respond to that, but I'm wondering if our Arkansas senator would respond to that. Would you like to make a comment on that?
Actually, I would, and I agree with that. I don't mean this in a pejorative way toward men, but men have held that turf for so long. I think there's a sense of entitlement that I don't have to be great. I just look like that person who's always held the turf. And women, on the other hand, just exactly what you said, we use our disgust to eliminate ourselves from politics so often. We love to hide behind, oh my God, this is dirty, this is awful, I don't want to be a part of that. And what you do is eliminate yourself and continue to cede the turf to these guys. And so in an effort not to get dirty and be a part of this awful thing and this rough and tumble thing, you don't participate. Then when you see some woman who is successful in politics, like a Hillary Clinton or somebody, you set the ceiling so high that you can't possibly reach that ceiling. And if you do that, it sounds like it's a compliment, for example, to that person. But the other thing that is quite sinister that I think you don't think about is, and forgive me for this, but you're giving yourself a pass. You're giving yourself a reason not to step up because you can't possibly be that. And I think you should be very, very careful about that. You are never, ever going to be prepared for real, as men think they are, and they really are not, to run for office. So the thing you do is you just step up and do it. It's lonely being an elected official as a woman. And I so agree with what you said about being a woman. I will not, and I don't think you should, nor be expected to, you shouldn't give up being a woman to be in this game. And every time I hear a woman say, I was going to say this, so I'll stop in a minute. Every time I hear a woman say, oh, I don't want you to see me as a woman, then that means you don't want to be seen. You are a woman. Yeah. And stop apologizing about it. Because I say two things about power when it comes to being a woman. One is, when you have the power, and you don't even have to mention being a man, men never talk about being men. That's because they have the power. It's kind of like, any kind of affirmative action. If you're the one who already has the power, what you get is not called affirmative action. You don't have to name it. Yeah. That's the ultimate power. And when women step up and they start talking about, well, I don't want you to see me as a woman. Men want you to see them as men. I guarantee you, if you think they don't, call them Mrs. If you think they don't. It's just that they don't have to. That's all. And that they don't have to do it. So, thank you.
I love it.
And thank you so much.
I love it. There's your answer. The only thing I could add to that is the fact that we know from research it takes women about 10 years longer than men to figure out how good they are. We do not have that time to waste. Yes. We've got two of them. There's one right here, and then we'll go back there. Over here. Okay, we'll come to the center next, and then we'll go back to that table right back there. Okay? Yes?
You want me to go ahead? Oh.
Where are we going?
Yeah.
Do you have the mic? Claim power.
Okay. So I grew up in a generation where I could always be whatever I wanted to, and I felt that the whole time. But I'm a mother now, and I feel like there's a lot of pressure from the generation above me, my mom, who, and my husband helps with our daughter. He does 50%. He's equal share in parenting our kid. But when he's changing a diaper, she reminds me, your dad never changed diapers. And he's Mr. Mom, where I feel like we're doing a disservice by trying to keep the power of being the child caregiver, and not equal for the men as well, so that we could be, at work. I'm sorry, I'm very nervous. I don't like the microphone.
It's okay. I think I know what you're saying, but you're talking, there are two pieces to it that I'm hearing. One is your mother is criticizing you. Is that right?
Yeah, because,
Hold that mic close to your mouth. Yep.
Yeah, for just thinking, okay, I always did all of the childcare rearing. Your dad was at work, and now I'm at work, and my husband is helping. We're not helping.
It's
He's
not
a
helping.
parent.
He's being a dad,
Thank
right?
you.
Yeah.
He's being a parent, where
Yes.
it's portrayed as he's helping me
Yeah.
with what's my role.
They're babysitting, right? No,
Right.
you're being a parent.
Right. Yeah, my mom says, oh, your brother's babysitting while his wife goes to work. I'm like, no, he's being a parent,
Right.
And so I feel like for us to have the power and empowerment to be what we want to be, there's that piece also that comes with being a mother and being allowed to go and have a career and share that responsibility with our husbands.
Right. Well, this is a huge issue right now, and in some ways I get very discouraged about that the young generation of women are like freaking out about this, and they're making too big a deal of it. And I think it's really important for women of my generation or the next one who have done it to basically reassure these young women and say, hey, you know what, this has been going on for like centuries. This is not as complicated. It's just being a parent. You can do it. You make choices, and there's no such thing as balance, and this is life, and you just incorporate it. And make sure, I say to young women, be really careful who you marry. If you plan on having a career, be really careful who you marry. But, you're modeling for the younger girls the way a husband and a wife, a mother and a father can parent together. So we have a lot of cultural work to do there, but women do have to invite men in, insist on men, carrying the load. Women are still doing the second shift in much bigger numbers than men. And so we really have to work that out at home in terms of that. So women have proven that, yes, we can do all those professional jobs out in the workforce, and men still need to prove, yes, they will put their shoulder to the wheel at home equally. So keep it up and ignore your mom. Say, your mom, times have changed. Okay, now there was a woman right here. Yes.
Thank you. And I want some advice on being the only woman in the room and speaking up, as I'm probably more seasoned than most in here, and then that being shut down. So how do you get out of that being shut down? I tend to just...
Okay, so when you say shut down, what happens? How are you shut down?
They don't acknowledge that you've said anything. If you're at a table with 5 men, a boardroom, and you say it, then the best way for them to shut you down is to start talking to each other. Yeah. Does everybody
How many
get that?
women in this room can relate to what she just said? Yeah. And it's still, when you get to leadership levels, this is still very, very common, the only woman in the room. So there are a couple things I would say about this. Here's what we know. 1 is a token, 2 is a presence, 3 is a voice. There's a magic number. The number is 33%. You have to get to 33% representation by any minority group before you even start changing the conversation, let alone the decisions. So when we have 17% women in Congress, or only 20 out of our 100 US senators, we are not even changing the conversation, folks, just barely beginning. So one of the big pieces is say, okay, I'm here, I'm the token, I'm the pioneering interloper in this group, and you've got to, keep raising your voice. Number two, be very conscious that we got to get other women in there. And when there are two women in the room or another woman in the room, and a woman says something, and it starts going right by, and you know what's going to happen. 10 minutes later, some guy's going to come up with this brilliant idea that she just said. You say number one, you say a couple of things. Hold on. I really like what Susan just said there. What do you mean by that? Pull it back. You got to support her there. And then if they play that little game of, I got this great idea, let's play. Joe, I love that you elaborated a little bit on Julie's idea. Come on, this we got to get in there. This is what I'm talking about in terms of sisterhood. The guys do it all the time. They do it all the time, and we have to help one another. Strategically, consciously, have fun with it. Susie, you're going to have to tell me in terms of time what we're going to do here, but I'll keep answering questions as long as we have time. I know there's a woman back here, I think, who was waiting, right? Yeah. Whomever has the mic.
Hi, my name is Valerie Phillips, and I work for juvenile court, and I've been working for juvenile court for 18 years and in a social service field, human resource service. This is not a question. This is just my perception. And one of the things that you said, the information you presented is very good information, and I jotted it down. And one of the things that you said that we need to help, I think it was we need to help another person rise or help each other rise. And I really think as women, we really need to do a good job. And the reason why I'm saying that is that my perception and that we have a lot of women who have self-esteem issues to where it does not allow them to be who they are. And so I think if we ourselves individually recognize that, then it would help us rise. And I really think that we as women, when we work in the organization and business, we need to support each other and not really envy other women, or we be in competition. I was talking to my husband the other day, and there's a movie, I don't know if any of you all have seen it, Mean Girls.
Oh, yeah.
And Lizzie Lohan is one of the actors that played in that movie. And I think about that movie, how they were all, envy of one another. So I would encourage women to support, each other and not really envy each other, because it gets in the way of, if there is a woman that wants to be a leader, and then you have other leaders that are always, being critical, then it keeps that individual from rising or really pursuing their dream or their passion.
Thank you. Yep. I agree with that 100%. That's what I'm talking about every woman for herself is a losing strategy. And so we see it all the time. And so, there's this saying, and I heard this from women all over the world who said to me, American women underestimate the ability that you have and the responsibility that you have to lead the way. And they said to me, you know what, when you rise, we all rise. And I would say to that in your workplaces too. When one woman rises, we all rise. Support one another. Are we okay on time? Yes.
Hi, my name is Gwen, and this does make you nervous. To the woman whose mother's she thought her mother was criticizing her, my mom does that too, but my perception is she's jealous. She says all the time, your father never did this. But here's what I struggle with. I work in higher ed in a female-dominated part of higher ed, librarianship. And I think a lot of women have what I term the nice disease. My mom has it really bad too. But I see a lot of my colleagues, as well as myself, really struggle to be powerful. And when you have the next layer up, all men, I worry that I'm coming across as a stereotype. And how do you quiet those voices to be powerful? Does that make sense?
Yes, yes. And that's why I think this whole idea about womaninity is really important, because we've gone through a number of decades here where there just really were too few women in leadership roles. We just didn't have any role models. Whereas we have them now, and the numbers are going to increase, but we've got enough of them now. So find women who you respect, and they could be people you're watching on TV, or they can be people that you interact with, you know, in the professional environment, in your community. Find those women, and number one, watch them. Watch them and see what it is that you like about how they handle themselves, and learn from them. And you'll see lots of examples. It doesn't all have to be the same, but find the ones that really you can sort of learn from and model from and like, and watch them, and then reach out to them even. So I would say absolutely, you know, you have to do that. And just, you know what, think about yourself as you're interlopers, you know, you're making history. I'm not saying this is easy, but you are making a significant contribution in your circles of influence. It's happening everywhere. Think about those women in Saudi Arabia who are getting in cars and risking getting beaten and arrested just because they get behind a wheel to drive. There are religious police walking the streets of Saudi Arabia ready to arrest people, you know, for the slightest little cultural violation. And they are standing up. Think about Malala. Think about the courage of women all over the world. When you are in a moment like that, say, this one's for me. And feel part of something bigger than yourself. And just keep moving ahead, just step by step. And find some other models and develop your own womaninity and strength, because the young girls are watching you.
I'm over here. Oh, hello.
Okay, we have a question there, and then we'll come here. Yes.
I've got the mic over here.
That's it. I got a mic.
Yeah, I don't have any problem jumping in there. One of the things I've noticed from my own personal experience and also from observations is that one of the barriers to women being truly in leadership and high up positions are very regressive workplace and maternity policies and laws. And yet we can't get rid of those very regressive policies and laws until we get more women into those positions to change them. You know, I'm talking things like affordable daycare, flex time, that kind of stuff. So what can we do with that catch-22 right now? Because I think it's urgent. I don't think we have time to wait for a woman president or, you know, women to be more Fortune 500 CEOs and that kind of thing. So what can we do right now to, like I said, overcome that catch-22?
Well, I think it's a great question, and I guess there are a couple of things that we can do. And you, I bet many of you realize that the United States lags the rest of the world in terms of our policies regarding maternity leave and flexible time and childcare. And you know, the Scandinavian countries offer maternity leave to men and women, basically. And not only do they offer it, basically, you're going to get this money, men, if you take the leave as a father, and if you don't take the leave, you just don't get the money. So there's a great incentive to the fathers also to take that kind of leave. So we have a lot of work to do in this country. But remember what I was talking about, that cultural change, I mean, culture changes slowly unless people push it. People lead it. And it has to happen all over the place, but it happens in every little place, so in your workplace. So there's a couple of things that we can do. Number one, You know those influential insiders that I was talking about? Influential insiders now are really the ones who are in workplace positions of authority, that have earned positions of authority. Many of them got there by not rocking the boat. I'm no feminist, but, fitting in and not being one of those troublemaking, pioneering interlopers was part of their skill, their political savvy. But if they're going to lead, it's time for them to pay it back. And it's time for them to break the rules. And so you're not a leader. I don't care what level you've achieved. If you're just protecting the status quo that's been created by men and you're a woman there, you're not leading. And so I really call on women who are in positions at your companies to do anything about those policies, to be courageous and raise your voices and lead it. So we need women who are there to do that. We need more women in elected office. Big numbers. I mean, we have incredibly regressive laws that are being passed in Michigan right now that are horrifying in terms of women, in terms of reproductive rights and in terms of all kinds of things that are going on because of the small number of women that are in elected office. So and then I would even say, that workplaces today, they need women. We are the talent pool. They can't afford for women to simply leave. And so I would say, come together. Come together as a group and see what you can do in your own workplace. And be politically, be savvy about it. Understand how you lead change and get it done for the good of your company, for the good of your organization. And do it together as a group. Does anyone else have anything they want to add about that? Okay. We have a question right here, and then we're coming back there, okay? Yes.
Just real quickly, I would add about that. Men are making those rules, but if women showed up at that Capitol in droves, we'd get a different outcome. You just need to be there. But my question to you, I thought early on, I really wanted to ask you about this because you seem to be so conscious about the language you use, and I think that's brilliant. I haven't heard you use the word lady one time. And I think the opposite of that is that womaninity idea. And in the South in particular, I have cautioned women about getting caught in the lady trap so I would like to hear your ideas about, if indeed lady is a trap for us. And secondly, would you please speak to disabusing us of the notion that power has to corrupt you, therefore women back away, and that it is okay to have power. In fact, it's essential to have power without apology.
Yeah, absolutely. Two things. Number one, one of the things I'm really sensitive about and that is fascinating to me is, different cultures. And we have different cultures here in the United States, in different parts of the United States, just as we do in different countries. When I went to Saudi Arabia, I was wearing an abaya, I do try to be very sensitive to that. And so you're right, I'd never use the word lady. But I did notice that you use that here. It was even in the program, and it may be part of your culture. But personally, I would say I'm no lady, I'm a leader. And I think that lady to me is sort of tied too closely to that femininity piece. It's a wonderful thing to be a lady, but to me it's narrow. It's like, here's how you're supposed to behave. And women, we have been, narrow gender rules about how women are supposed to behave, and it's getting wider, but it has to get a whole lot wider. And ladies, pretty narrow. And so I would definitely say, I hope you'll embrace your womaninity, which includes being a lady, but it also includes raising your voice and breaking the rules and claiming power and all those things I talked about. Now, regarding power, yes, And Kim Campbell, who was the first woman prime minister of Canada, I got to know her through the International Women's Forum, and I interviewed her for my book. And she said to me, tell women not to disdain power. And she said, I'm power hungry. Not for myself, but because power is the currency for getting things done. And so if you believe that you would use power well to get things done, it's the currency that men use to get things done. And if women don't have the currency or the power, there's a great saying about, you know what, if you're not at the tables of power, you're going to be on the menu. And pretty much that's where we are right now. We're on the menu. And you have got to have power. So I hope that you will think very differently about that, and let's stop punishing other women for going after power. And that's why I love that Ban Bossy campaign, because there is this, what I think of the metaphor of cultural quicksand that girls are raised in, and it slows us down. It like pulls at our feet, and we have to like pull ourselves out of it. And so anything we can do that lift our girls up and come on, let's go. Let's go. And getting comfortable with power is a really next piece, which is why there's a whole chapter in my book called Claim Power. Yep. And where was the, right there? Yeah.
My question does have to do with politics. I have a friend who has been encouraged and who has thrown her hat in the ring to run for one of our constitutional offices here in the state of Arkansas. And she is running into an issue that her predecessor, who also happened to be a woman, was convicted of a felony. If men didn't run because their predecessors had run-ins with the law, we wouldn't have any people in office. How can she deal with that? Because it's just the
ignore it. It has nothing to do with her.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you said that. You know, I mean, somebody said that. You know, it's not just that we need, you know, we haven't reached full equality as human beings when simply the most talented and most brilliant women are in positions of power, but what equally, you know, unethical, idiotic women are also in those positions, you know, because that's where we have in terms of men. I mean, it's not that women are better than men and all those kinds of things. We're going to have women. I mean, I know you have a trial going on right now in your state in terms of, you know, a key woman leader. You know, we're going to have that. But that you know, men think they're the norm. Men think they're the norm. And so, you know, for centuries in the professional and political arenas, they have been the norm. But they're not anymore. And so they continue to operate as if, you know, they're the norm and they should have all these jobs, and that if one man is a criminal or something, it has nothing to do with him. Whereas we still think that we're the exceptions to the rule. And we're half of the human race. And the human family, we're kind of like a dysfunctional family or like a motherless family, where all the decisions are being made by the dad. And you know that men and women balance one another. And so we desperately need women to, don't let that slow her down. It has nothing to do with her. Last one. Okay, one more.
Yes, I'm here in the middle. It's an honor to hear you speak, and thank you so much for all of your inspiring words. I'm a young women professional, and one thing that I think we also deal with is a work-life balance. I feel to be as professional as possible, to put as much effort as I possibly can in my job, it's important to also have a work-life balance. And I think that streamlines to our families at home. My mom is with me today. She's an inspiring business owner, and growing up, I don't know how she had time to be such an amazing mother and successful business owner, but I'm one of the young women that hasn't started a family yet because the career is so important to me. And I'm just wondering what advice you have and what you do to balance your work life and keep both of those sustainable while you are as successful as you are.
Well, how lucky that you have such a mother and that she's here with you. So you have a fantastic role model right there, and that you know that you can do it. But you also know, I'm sure, that it's not easy, but hey, life isn't easy. And it's all about your choices. And you know, choose whatever life you want. And what are those pieces? And then prioritize them. And forget the word balance. Life is not balanced. You know, and it constantly changes. And there's a wonderful there's a chapter in my book where I really talk a lot about this. And I talk about the mother divide and women judging one another, you know, on who's a better mother. You know, full-time stay-at-home mothers or working mothers and this whole thing, which is ridiculous. All good mothers are working mothers. And yeah. And so that I would say, I mean, what I've learned about it is, you know, it's going to constantly change. Just work on this piece of it. And then, you know, your children, things are going to change. And then you just keep evolving things as you go along. And you have to own it. You know, no one else is going to own it. I don't think you're married yet, so be really, really careful about who you marry, and then make sure you hold him to all those promises he made before you got married afterwards. But believe that you can do it. Believe that you can do it, that you can have. I was with Arianna Huffington in New York last week. I was part of a big program that Accenture hosted, and she was there, and she has a new book out called Thrive. And she has a great line. She says, women really need to sleep their way to the top. Now, what she means by that is alone, you know, but she's talking about, you know, women are, you know, think that they have to do everything and they're not getting enough sleep and things. So believe that you can do it. And then just day by day by day. But believe that, she had a great line. She said that believe that the odds are stacked in your favor. And you know what? At this moment in time in the history of the world, for women, as American women, the odds are stacked in your favor. Now let's go power up.